Monday, July 7th. Field Marshal Wilhelm Ritter von Lieb, in charge of Army Group North, discusses with his staff the speedy advance of his troops and orders General Erich von Hoppner to advance with his panzers to the suburbs of Leningrad ahead of the infantry. Hitler, from his Rastenburg headquarters, reminds von Lieb that Leningrad is to be starved out. Army Group South, commanded by Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, continues its slow advance, breaking through the Stalin Line and heading east to take Berdichev, the city with the largest Jewish community in Russia. Winston Churchill sends Stalin a message promising that the United Kingdom will do everything in its power to help the Soviet people in their fight against the invader. The RAF is to step up its bombing of German cities to weaken the actions of the Luftwaffe in the east, forcing Hitler to send some of his aircraft west. President Roosevelt orders Operation Indigo, the landing of Marines in Iceland. The American president justifies this action to the press, arguing that it's necessary in order to defend the Western Hemisphere. The British government hopes to increase support for the convoys sailing across the North Atlantic. Furthermore, the American government sanctions the shipment of the first warplanes to Russia. Tuesday, July 8th. In Russia, from the Baltic to the Black Sea, the German armies advance on all fronts. The 4th Panzer Group of the Army Group North occupies the city of Pskov, 300 kilometers from Leningrad, and heads towards Novgorod. Stalin dismisses the commander of the 4th Army, General Alexander Korobkov, who is accused of treason and condemned to death. In his headquarters of Rastenburg, Hitler tells Franz Halder, head of the Army General Staff, that Leningrad, Stalingrad, and Moscow are the nerve center of Bolshevism and are to be destroyed. Halder voices his opposition to the Nazi leader's change of plans, which had initially called for the occupation of Kiev and Leningrad. The American heavy bomber, the B-17 Flying Fortress, sees action for the first time in the war. Some of the planes granted to the RAF by the Americans bomb the German naval base of Wilhelmshaven. In Belgium, Nazi supporter Leon de Grille organizes the Walloon Legion, formed by volunteers prepared to fight on the Russian front as Wehrmacht soldiers. Wednesday, July 9th. In Russia, the head of the Red Army's General Staff, Georgy Zhukov, creates a defensive line south of Leningrad along the Luga River. The Luga Operational Group, as the forces defending the city are called, is put under the command of Lieutenant General Pyadyshev, who has the task of confronting the first units of Army Group North that approach the city of Lenin. Army Group Center crosses the Stalin Line on the River Dvina and takes Vitebsk. The panzer divisions of Army Group South occupy Zhytomyr on their way to Kiev. Heinrich Himmler orders the execution of all gypsies detained in German concentration camps in the occupied territories. 17,000 men, women, and children are assassinated. The official dissolution of Yugoslavia is announced. Part of the former country becomes the independent state of Croatia, while another part is annexed by the Third Reich, and the rest is taken by Italy, Albania, Bulgaria, and Hungary. In London, a group of cryptographers decipher the Enigma code used by the German army to direct its operations in Russia. In the Middle East, in Syria, French troops loyal to the Vichy government and commanded by General Dentz surrender to the Allies. Thursday, July 10th. In Moscow, Stalin creates the strategic direction of the war and divides the command of the armies into 3 areas. Marshal Semyon Budoyny is placed in charge of the South and Southwest Front. Marshal Semyon Timoshenko will command the Central West Front, and Marshal Klement Voroshilov the Northwest Front. The Finnish army prepares its offensive against the Russians through the Karelian Isthmus, north of Lake Ladoga. Army Group Center puts an end to the sporadic fighting in the area of Minsk. 323,000 Russian soldiers have been taken prisoner, and 2,300 tanks, 1,400 artillery pieces, and 250 airplanes have been destroyed or captured. The city is taken by Guderian's panzers. In the south, the armies of the Third Reich have now reached River Irpin, a tributary of the Dnieper, 15 kilometers from Kiev. In London, an agreement is signed between the British and Russian governments to act together against the Axis powers. President Roosevelt informs Winston Churchill that the United States will intervene in the war if Japan commits any act of aggression in the Pacific. Friday, July 11th. Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, commanding the Army Group South, slows down the march of his armored divisions in the outskirts of Kiev, hoping to lure the Russians out onto the steppes, where it will be easier to defeat them. Meanwhile, Army Group Center continues its advance towards Smolensk, attempting to encircle the city with a pincer movement between Orsha and Yelnya. To date, the Germans have taken nearly 600,000 Soviet prisoners. Hitler is convinced that victory is imminent. The American government appoints Colonel William Joseph Donovan head of the Office of the Coordination of Information. His main task is to lay the foundations for the unification of the intelligence services of the armed forces. In the course of time, he will be regarded as the father of the CIA. In the Sea War, Allied ships are equipped with new depth charges. Drooped from the sides of destroyers, they have a coordinated fuse and are more effective against submarines. In addition, a part of the fleet is supplied with high-frequency direction finding equipment, known as HFDF or Huff Duff, which enables communications operators to locate the origin of a transmission and thus track U-boats. Saturday, July 12th. In Russia, fighting continues along River Dnieper. Before withdrawing, the Red Army soldiers blow up most bridges. The Germans take Schlov, Kopice, and Bychov, cities which represented the largest center of publishing in Hebrew in Europe. Stalin accepts Churchill's proposal to sign a mutual assistance pact with the United Kingdom. Both countries promise not to sign a separate peace with Germany. Following the disintegration of Yugoslavia, the new independent state of Montenegro is created in the Balkans. In the U.S. Congress, the Chief of Staff of the Army, General George Marshall, expresses his concerns about the international situation, but states that for the time being, there are no plans to send soldiers to Europe. In the Middle East, in the town of Acre, Palestine, General Henry Dentz disobeys the Vichy government and meets General Wilson to end hostilities in Syria. The former French protectorate will be controlled by Allied forces. In the Sea War, the Allied advances are counteracted by the production of more U-boats, especially the 7C model.